If you believe betrayal always comes from the outside, think again. Because sometimes the most dangerous enemy doesn't cross borders. He wore the uniform. He swore the oath. He stood watch over national secrets. And when he went home, he hid those secrets inside his child's toys. If you believe power, loyalty, and trust always protect a nation, stay with this story to the end. And if you value investigative documentaries that expose corruption, hidden threats, and national security failures from within, follow this channel now. At 5:12 a.m., in a quiet suburban neighborhood near a U.S. naval installation, federal agents moved in. No sirens, no warnings, no room for mistakes. This wasn't a drug raid, it wasn't a violent standoff. This was a counterintelligence operation. The target was not an enemy combatant. He was a decorated naval officer. And the charge waiting behind that door was one word the military fears most: espionage. Chapter 1. The officer no one questioned. The officer at the center of this case had everything the military values: decorated service, years of classified assignments, access to secure naval systems, a reputation built on discipline and loyalty. Colleagues described him as meticulous, quiet, reliable. He attended briefings on classified operations, fleet movements, communications protocols, and sensitive intelligence assessments. Nothing about his record suggested risk, and that was exactly what made him dangerous. In modern espionage cases, the most valuable assets are not reckless traitors or ideological extremists. They are trusted professionals who blend perfectly into the system, unnoticed, unchallenged, unquestioned. This officer was one of them. For years, he lived an ordinary life. Married, children, commute to base, weekend routines. No extravagant spending, no visible red flags. Yet somewhere within that routine, something had shifted. And NCIS would eventually learn that while the officer wore a uniform by day, he was living a double life behind closed doors. Chapter 2. The First Whispers. The investigation did not begin with an arrest. It began with anomalies. Subtle deviations that only seasoned analysts would recognize as dangerous signals. Encrypted communications appeared in data systems where they did not belong, quietly bypassing normal authorization pathways. Metadata logs showed irregular access patterns to classified repositories, inconsistent with duty hours or assigned responsibilities. Sensitive files were opened without operational necessity, often in combinations that raised immediate internal concern. At first, analysts assumed system error, but then patterns emerged, repeating with precision rather than randomness. Files accessed late at night, repeated downloads of naval intelligence unrelated to the officer's assignment or mission scope, cross-referencing of classified materials that, when combined, revealed operational vulnerabilities across multiple naval domains. This was not curiosity, this was collection. NCIS counterintelligence specialists quietly flagged the activity. They did not confront the officer. They did not alert command. Instead, they watched, allowing the digital trail to grow. In espionage cases, exposure too early can destroy evidence. And NCIS suspected something far larger than a single violation, a deliberate intelligence operation unfolding in silence. Chapter 3. The Long Surveillance. What followed was months of silent observation, conducted without the subject ever realizing he was under scrutiny. The officer's digital footprint was monitored with precision, tracing every access point and system interaction. Communications were logged, encrypted traffic dissected, and contact networks quietly mapped. Travel history was reviewed. No foreign trips, no unexplained deposits, no obvious handler. But then came the breakthrough. Buried inside what initially appeared to be routine system maintenance. During a routine audit, investigators noticed encrypted storage devices repeatedly connecting to a personal laptop registered to the officer's home internet address. That laptop was not authorized for classified material and should never have interacted with secure networks. The encryption was sophisticated, military-grade, non-commercial, and designed to evade standard forensic tools used in civilian investigations. This was not amateur behavior. This was tradecraft. NCIS now knew the threat was real, but they still did not know how the officer was removing classified data from secure facilities or where it was being stored. The answer would be more disturbing than anyone expected. Chapter 4. The Raid Order. By early 2025, NCIS leadership approved a full counterintelligence operation. A covert search was deemed impossible. The risk of evidence destruction was too high. The possibility of an external intelligence connection could not be ignored. A dawn raid was authorized, not on a base, not in an office, but at a family home. Because that is where the data was believed to be hidden. And what investigators feared most was not what they would find, but where they would find it. Chapter 5. Entering the house. When agents entered the home, the officer was detained without resistance. His spouse was stunned. His children were escorted to another room. The house looked ordinary. Family photographs lined the walls. Children's artwork hung on the refrigerator. Toys were scattered across the living room. Nothing suggested espionage. But NCIS had learned long ago that intelligence operatives hide secrets in the most unremarkable places. Places no one would ever think to search. And so they began to dismantle the illusion. Chapter 6. The Discovery. The first discovery came inside a child's toy chest. What appeared to be a plastic action figure was heavier than expected. Inside, agents found a hollowed compartment, professionally altered, containing a micro-storage device sealed against moisture and heat. That device contained classified naval intelligence. As the search continued, more toys were examined. Stuffed animals, toy trucks, educational games, each one modified, each one containing concealed memory chips. Some were disguised so expertly that even experienced investigators initially missed them. By the end of the search, agents had recovered dozens of concealed storage units, all hidden inside children's toys. The implications were chilling. This officer had turned his own home and his children's possessions into a vault for stolen national secrets. Chapter 7. What the files contained. The data recovered was catastrophic in scope. Naval deployment schedules, communications encryption protocols, vulnerabilities in radar and tracking systems, assessments of allied naval capabilities, briefings on regional maritime operations. This was not defensive information. This was intelligence that could reshape military strategy or dismantle it. Analysts concluded that if the material reached a hostile power, it could compromise naval forces across multiple theaters. Lives were at risk, not hypothetically, immediately. Chapter 8. The question no one could answer. Why? That was the question haunting investigators. The officer denied financial motivation. No large payments were found. No offshore accounts. Ideology? There was no record of extremist beliefs. Coercion? No evidence of blackmail. What remained was the most dangerous motive of all: voluntary betrayal. Some intelligence professionals believe the officer sought validation. The thrill of outsmarting the system, of controlling information others could not access. Others believe he intended to sell the intelligence, but had not yet completed the transaction. Or worse, that he had already shared portions and erased the trail. NCIS could not be certain, and uncertainty is the enemy of security. Chapter 9. The Interrogation. During questioning, the officer remained composed. He acknowledged the data, he acknowledged the concealment, but he refused to identify any foreign contact. His silence was strategic. Without proof of transmission, prosecutors faced a complex challenge. Espionage cases require demonstrating intent, damage, and connection. But even without a foreign handler identified, the damage was undeniable. The presence of classified data outside secure facilities was itself a breach of the highest order, and hiding it inside children's toys crossed a moral line that horrified even seasoned agents. Chapter 10. The Military Shockwave. When news of the raid reached senior military leadership, shock turned into alarm. Internal audits were launched, access protocols were suspended, entire departments were reviewed. The case exposed a painful truth. Background checks do not prevent betrayal. Decorations do not guarantee loyalty. Time in service does not equal trust. The military had assumed its greatest threats came from cyber attacks, foreign espionage, or external infiltration. This case proved that the most dangerous threat can wear the uniform. Chapter 11. The Family Left Behind. Lost amid the national security crisis was the human cost, one that statistics and court filings could never fully capture. A family torn apart, children whose toys were no longer innocent objects, but silent witnesses to a crime they could never understand. A spouse forced to confront a life built on deception, questioning years of trust, memories, and shared sacrifice. NCIS agents described the raid as one of the most emotionally difficult of their careers. Not because of resistance, but because of the silence. There were no screams, no chaos, only disbelief that lingered long after the house was cleared. Espionage does not just steal secrets, it destroys lives. Chapter 12, Legal Fallout. The officer was charged under multiple statutes, including unauthorized retention of national defense information in violation of military secrecy laws, offenses carrying decades-long sentences. Prosecutors sought severe penalties, citing irreversible damage to national security and the calculated nature of the concealment. Defense attorneys argued lack of proven foreign transmission, attempting to frame the breach as incomplete rather than catastrophic. The trial would hinge not just on what was found, but on what could be proven beyond classified inference. And even as legal proceedings began, intelligence agencies continued damage assessments, rewriting protocols, altering communications, and adjusting deployments worldwide. Because once information is compromised, it can never be fully recovered. Chapter 13, Why this case terrified NCIS. This case shattered assumptions held across counterintelligence communities for decades. The officer did not smuggle documents out in briefcases. He did not photograph screens with hidden cameras. He did not use obvious methods that traditional security models were designed to catch. He adapted. He hid intelligence where no one would look. Inside innocence itself, exploiting trust, routine, and the protective instinct of family life. That is why this case became mandatory reading inside counterintelligence circles. It proved that espionage has evolved, and that trust remains its most exploitable weakness, the threat within. The raid on that quiet home did more than expose one traitor. It exposed a vulnerability that cannot be sealed with locks, codes, or cameras, because the greatest threat to national security is not always an enemy across the ocean. Sometimes it is a trusted insider who understands the system well enough to betray it silently. As this case fades from headlines, remember this: not every battlefield is visible, not every weapon fires bullets, and not every betrayal announces itself. If you want more investigative documentaries that uncover the hidden dangers inside powerful institutions, stories that governments would rather you forget, subscribe, follow, and stay with us, because the next raid may already be underway.